Welcome to episode 4 of my tutorial series. Today's topic is production. This is the production screen. First, I want to take a closer look at our resources. As I showed you in the interface overview episode, we have these 7 resources. For production, the important ones are energy, metal, and rare materials. Crude oil is just there to make fuel. Supplies and fuel is consumed by our units, and money is for trade. So for production, all we need are the top 3 resources. How much we need depends on our industrial capacity. Each single active industrial capacity requires 2 energy, 1 metal, and 0.5 rare materials each day. So as we currently have 201 IC, we require 402 energy, 201 metal, and 100.5 rare materials per day to have our industry run at maximum capacity. If we take a look at our spending here, it says we're just using 263 energy, and that's because we're currently wasting IC. Wasted IC does not use any resources, but it's still something you'll want to avoid if at all possible. We can fix the problem by using the IC sliders. These sliders determine what your industrial capacity is used for. While we have 201 IC total, what we spend it on is up to us, and the distribution can change quite often depending on what is going on at the time. For example, whenever you research improved technology for some of your units, you can upgrade your old units to take advantage of the new tech. So whenever you can upgrade something, there will be a need here for upgrades. Right now, it's 34.61, and as units get upgraded, the need will decrease, until finally it will be at 0. Any more than the required amount will be wasted. To spend exactly as much as is required, you can click the Need button, which will adjust the amount spent and lock it, as indicated by the grayed out slider button. To lock or unlock these sliders at any time, you can right-click them. This is useful to make sure that certain amounts stay fixed and do not change when you adjust other values. As the sliders represent your total IC, moving one slider will also move all the others that are unlocked to account for the change. For example, now we have just consumer goods and production unlocked. Increasing production will in turn reduce consumer goods. So the second thing we can spend our IC on is reinforcements. The need is at 0 right now because reinforcement is used to reinforce troops that have taken losses or reserve troops that have been activated to become fully fledged troops and so have to be reinforced to full strength. You will usually only see reinforcement needs in wartime, and right now we're at peace, so it's fine. Supplies are a special case because you cannot waste industrial capacity on them. The more IC you put in, the more supplies you get. The reason why you might want to do that, even though you don't need them yourself, is trade. Supplies are an excellent trade good, and producing extra supplies to sell to others is a great way to increase your income, which in turn allows you to trade for other resources you might need. So whenever you have some extra IC you don't need for anything else, spend it on supplies. The required IC for production depends on what we are currently producing. Right now, we just need 13.98 IC for the units we are producing. If I want to now build a battleship, you can see its IC cost is 9.37. So if we start the production, our need there is increased by that amount. When the unit is finished, the need will drop again. The last available field here is consumer goods. These are just there for the happiness of your population. Spending more than the required amount will decrease dissent, so unless you have dissent for some reason, which can be seen up there, you don't want to spend any more than what is needed. If you don't want to adjust these sliders yourself all the time, you can activate the slider AI. By default, it'll be on manual control, but you can click these arrows to change the slider AI behavior, setting it to prioritize upgrades, reinforcements, or production. This works pretty well, so feel free to use it. Now that you know how the IC distribution works, let's check out what we can build and how. Here we have our production queue. As Germany, we start the game with some units already in production. There's a heavy cruiser called KMS Graf Spee, which is costing us 6.12 IC per day to build. The production speed is at 100%, and the production will be finished in 4 days on January 5th. We can increase or decrease the project's priority, or cancel it entirely. Changing the priority does nothing if we have enough industrial capacity for all our projects, but if we have more in the queue than we can produce at the same time, you might want to reorder your queue so that the more important units get built first. We're also building some destroyers and submarines, which will be finished in March. So if we want to now build something new, we have a lot of possibilities. We could build a division, which is a unit consisting of several brigades. This category covers all land units such as infantry, tanks, engineers, cavalry, militia, etc. We could build just a brigade detachment, so a single brigade that we can assign to an existing division. We could build an air wing, such as fighters, bombers, or transport planes. Air bases, which you can place wherever you like in your territory and allow you to station or resupply airplanes there. Flotillas, which are all naval units such as battleships, cruisers, or submarines. And naval bases, which are the same as air bases but for ships and can of course only be placed on the coast. But there's even more than that. We can build more industrial capacity, which can be essential for some countries. But keep in mind that it takes a long time to build, and that every extra IC you build means you will also need more resources to support them. Finding a good balance that you can maintain is very important. Then there's AA guns, which defend your territories from bombers and such. Radar stations, which give you intel on enemy units in the area. Nuclear reactors, which are required to produce nuclear bombs. Rocket test sites, which are required to advance research in the field of missiles and jet planes. Convoys, which are used to transport resources across the sea for both trade and relocation, as well as escorts, which are used to defend transports from enemy raids. Note that building one convoy or escort will actually give you 10, so they are quite cheap. You can see down here that we currently have 72 transports, 2 escorts, as well as 2 active convoys. Convoys are created automatically as necessary, but you can do it manually by clicking the Create Convoy button and disabling the auto creation. I'd recommend just leaving it on auto though, it works fine. Once you're at war, you need to make sure that you don't run out of transports, and having escorts is not a bad idea either, but they're not absolutely necessary. Your trade routes will inevitably get raided by the enemy and transports will get destroyed in the process. If you can't keep your trade routes going with enough transports, your trades will be cancelled, which can be disastrous. The last option here are resistance bases, which you can build if your territory is occupied, and they allow you to fight back and harass the enemy in situations where you normally can't do anything anymore. Let's check out how to actually build something now. First, we'll build a division. The way this works is that you have a maximum allowed brigade number of either 4 or 5 depending on your research. For me, the allowed maximum is 4, so I can now mix and match up to 4 brigades to form my division. All these brigade stats and division setups will get their own episode later on, as I want to focus on the things relevant to production for now. I'll pick this infantry preset consisting of 3 infantry brigades. The first thing I want to touch on is the concept of IC days. Each unit you build has an IC cost and a build time. The IC cost is not the total cost of the unit though, it is actually the daily cost you have to pay for as long as the unit takes to build. So our 3 infantry brigade division costs 5.92 IC each day for 99 days, which adds up to 586 IC in total cost, or IC days as it's called. Adding another infantry brigade to this division increases its daily cost, but the build time stays the same. This is relevant because you might build something that costs more IC, but takes less time to build, and thus could actually have a lower total cost. For example, our infantry division here costs about as much daily IC as a battleship, but a battleship takes over 2 years to build, so the IC days cost is so much higher for the battleship. Always make sure you take both daily IC cost and build time into consideration when building something. Another very important thing is practical knowledge. You'll notice these soldier icons here with a number below them. These represent practical knowledge gain from producing this unit. Each time you build an infantry unit, your infantry practical knowledge will increase. In this case, it would increase by 0.8, because each of our 4 infantry brigades increases it by 0.2. The higher your infantry practical knowledge is, the faster and cheaper you can build infantry units. By hovering over these, you can see how much your current knowledge influences your build time and cost. Here, infantry units are 21.2% cheaper and faster to build than normal, and as I build more, the reduction will go even higher. Now, this is just infantry practical, and each unit type has its own practical knowledge category. Switching out an infantry brigade here with a light armor brigade, we can immediately see a different type of practical knowledge at play here. Building just a single light armor brigade increases armor practical knowledge by a whole point, much more than our infantry does for its own practical. And that's just because it's much more expensive and you can't build them in high quantities like infantry. So building just a few tanks has a major impact, but for infantry you need to build dozens for a similar effect. Practical knowledge is why it's important to specialize into certain unit types, so that you can minimize their cost. Building a lot of different unit types will spread your practical knowledge too thin, and you won't be able to build as many units as you could if you specialized more. If you want to build more than one of a certain division, you can use serial and parallel runs. Parallel allows you to build several identical units at the same time, so I can build 4 of these infantry divisions at once, which of course costs a lot of IC. Serial, on the other hand, will produce units in succession, so once a production run is finished, it will start producing more of the same units automatically for as many runs as you want. This also takes advantage of improvements in your practical knowledge. So if the first production run is finished and your practical knowledge for that unit increases, the second production run will be a bit faster and cheaper than the last. Finally, we have the option to build a division as reserves. This will drastically reduce the cost of production, but the units won't be at full strength when they are finished, and have to be mobilized and reinforced when they are needed. It's still quite a bit cheaper than building a full unit, but if you're caught unprepared, you might be overrun before your units are even combat ready. Building brigade attachments works almost the same as divisions. The only difference is that you just build a single brigade. Once they are finished, you can attach them to an existing division, if it still has a brigade slot left. Air wings and flotillas are also produced individually like brigades. They do have a few different stats that ground forces don't have, and are a lot more expensive and take longer to build on average. When choosing what to build, make sure you're again considering practical knowledge. For example, transport planes use heavy aircraft practical, which is the same as strategic bombers. So building one will also make the other cheaper in the future, so that's a good thing to combine. Also note that for air wings we have a list of their parts here. This is determined by research. As you get research done, they will get better equipment and become much more powerful, even though it's technically the same unit. As for flotillas, their IC cost is usually pretty low, but the heavier ones have a crazy build time. A battleship right now takes 28 months. Hovering over the practical icon though, it shows that our capital ship practical reduces building cost and time by -15%. That means our knowledge there is so bad that it actually takes longer to build and is more expensive than normal. That also means though that there is a lot of room to improve. Building a few of these will have a drastic impact on the cost and build time, and you could easily reduce the build time by a year or more if you want to. Of course, it's going to take these 28 months to get there, so if you want to have a strong fleet, you better start working on it ASAP. Battlecruisers also use capital ship practical and are a bit quicker to build, so you could start with some of these to get your practical knowledge up a bit faster. If you ever want to check up on your practical knowledge for something, it's in the technology screen in the lower part. The blue icons are practical. The teal ones are theory, which are similar to practical, but are increased by and speed up research and have no effect on production. So capital ship practical is at 2.5 right now. Building a single battleship increases it by 4.4, so that would be a major improvement with just one battleship. There is another special aspect to flotillas in that you can manually change its equipment depending on what you have researched. Usually the latest technology will also be the best, but sometimes there might be a downside, or you might want to reduce the cost by building it with lesser technology. Also, flotillas cannot be upgraded. What you build is what you get, and there is no way to change it later. While it's true that by the time a capital ship is finished, it's usually already obsolete and you have much better technology researched, that's just how it is and you have to get your practical knowledge up anyway. Also, everyone else has to deal with the same thing, so it's not really a problem. The Add CAGs button there is for carriers. Carriers use CAGs, or carrier air groups, which are air wings stationed on carriers. You can build and assign them manually, or you can click the Add CAGs button before building the carrier and CAGs will be added accordingly. So just a few final things to add here. Note that the other things you can build, such as industrial capacity and anti-aircraft guns, also use practical knowledge, just like units. Down here, your HQs will let you know what units they feel they need, and you can click Build to add them all to the queue. I wouldn't recommend you do that. If anything, use this just as an indicator of what area your forces might be lacking in, and decide what to build yourself accordingly. Automatic deployment makes it so that when a unit has finished building, it will automatically be deployed on the field by the AI. Normally, you will get a warning when something is ready to be deployed, and you can choose where to put it. I'd recommend leaving this option off. The Theater Forces button takes a look at all your units currently in the field and attaches them into your command structure. Again, something I wouldn't recommend unless you have the AI handling all your units anyway, then you might as well let it handle this too, I guess. One last thing, strategic resources. These are special resources that give you awesome bonuses. For example, we have horses in Oldenburg, which increases our whole country's supply throughput by 10%, which is massive. The other resources are similarly good. You can see them on the map by using the Resources map mode. Strategic resources you own will appear in blue, or blue stripes over green if there's also other resources in the province. We can also see other countries' strategic resources in yellow, and if you want to know what it does, select the province and there will be an icon in the province overview that you can hover over. For this automotive industry resource, you get an armor build speed increase of 15%. That is so good! Keep in mind that strategic resources do not stack, so having a resource twice does not give you more bonuses than having that resource once. Alright, that should do it for this episode. Thank you for watching and see you next time.